as soon Matt will start off by giving some participation instructions and then the roll call, whatever else you would like.
Super. Thanks a lot, Chris. Before I roll call, just a little review for the members, but we've got a lot of folks here in the audience today, so I think it's helpful just to kind of go through a couple things about our organization, about the St. Joe River Basin Commission, just to kind of help folks understand. First of all, what are we talking about with the St. Joe River Basin? We're talking about an area of land that drains to the St. Joe River. So we have member counties who, the St. Joe River itself does not flow through the county, but all the land in the county drains to the St. Joe River. And there's a whole bunch of problems, issues, assets, values, anyway, things related to water that can't be solved just by working in the river. We have to look at all the land that's draining to the river to address the issues that we face in the lakes or rivers. I say the river, but it's lakes too. So 15 counties in the St. Joe River Basin. Our governance and our funding lies entirely on the Indiana side of the basin, but our mission instructs us to work across the whole 15 county region. This is just in there for reference. It comes out of our statute, the kinds of things that we were set up for, but basically our purpose is to provide a forum for the study, discussion, and evaluation of water resource issues in the St. Joe River Basin. And then who the River Basin Commission is. So from each of the 6 Indiana counties that drain to the St. Joe River, we have a representative from the county executive, the municipal executives, health officers, county surveyors, and Soil and Water Conservation District, and last but not least, the DNR from the state of Indiana. We're kind of technically part of the Indiana DNR, but we're made up of local government units, and we've got these 5 representatives from each county in the basin. So that's a little bit about who we are, some basic instructions before we do a roll call. We don't have anybody joining us virtually as far as our membership. But we do kind of have a tradition of stating your name and your county. This is for commission members. When you make a motion on something, if you could state your name and your county. We do like to try and get a couple counties involved in each motion if and when we can, just to make sure that we don't have one county kind of driving our business. If you do that, that would help. And it also helps with Ashley capturing in the minutes who has made the motion, which is very helpful. We spent the last week listening to the recording like 6 times trying to figure out whose voice that was making that motion, and it's difficult. So that would help. So rather than doing a formal roll call, what I'd like to do is just go around the table here and have you each introduce yourself. You can state your name, title, affiliation. If you represent someone else, these people that are appointed by statute have the ability to designate a proxy representative. So some folks are serving in that capacity. If you could let us know who you represent, that would be helpful as well. So start over here.
Bill Marshford, Elkhart County Surveyor.
Jim Pence, Elkhart County Soil and Water Conservation District.
I am Rod Edgell with the Department of Natural Resources. I'm the proxy for the Director of Water.
Jewel Wise, Cottington County Soil and Water District's board member.
John Roberts, from Cottington County. I represent our county commissioner, Gary Brown here.
Dara Jenkins, Public Biologist with the City of Elkhart, and Mayor Rod Owens, for the City of Elkhart.
Jim Slaybaugh, Scott County Surveyor.
Stephen Egan, school coordinator for the city of Kenville, proxy to the mayor. Alicia Walsh, student county health department administrator, and I'm also on proxy for Dr. Chris.
Chris Thomas, City of Angola, sport coordinator representing Area Hickman. Janelle Snyder, Steuben County Soil and Water Conservation District administrative coordinator.
Martin Franke, representing Griggs County Surveyor.
Steve Vaughn, the Griggs County Surveyor's Office, representing that.
Dan Lash, representing Noble County Commissioner Anita Hess.
Bill Hartson, Elkhart County Health Department, proxy for Dr. Richard Costa, Elkhart County Health Office.
Chair, we do have a quorum. We've got 15 folks here, so we're good.
Okay, so moving on.
What?
Tell me.
No, that's right. I was just thinking, maybe for the folks in the audience, it'd be helpful. So my name's Matt Mearsman. I didn't bother to introduce myself. I serve as the director of the St. Joe River Basin Commission, but technically I'm an employee of the Michigan Area Council of Governments, which is a regional planning agency, represents 4 counties over in the east-western portion of the basin. But the Michigan Area Council of Governments provides staff for the River Basin Commission. So myself, Ashley Matthews is out there in the audience helping with the notes and things. And then Kate Barrett and Brian Coleman are also here, all with Baycom. So we help staff the River Basin Commission. So I thought I'd throw that. Yeah. And we did have someone join us if that adds to our forum. If you want to introduce yourself, John.
John Law, St. Joe County, representing, Emerson Bear.
Mr. McNamara. Thank you, John. Okay.
You good?
Yes, thank you.
So, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And just a reminder that a request can be made at any item moved for a separate vote.
Yeah, I sent the minutes around a week ago. Ashley did a great job. Gave her a little help on that one, but otherwise, looked good to me. I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments about the minutes. Not, I can move on to the next item, please. Okay. Next item is our financial report. I got 3 statements that were in your packets. And I'll go over each one of them and you can ask questions about each one. The first one is our statement of activities, basically like our profit and loss statement. Just a couple of things to know. You'll see some notes on there. The main one is good news, and that is we're making a whole lot more money in interest than we expected to because of the high interest rates, I guess. But we've been averaging close to $750 a month just in interest. So we exceeded what we budgeted for interest, so that's a good thing. I think the only other, but we do have some delayed expenses, so you'll see that we're kind of behind on a couple of our special project items, namely water monitoring, and then our planning and resource development. Those costs are coming. In fact, we've already got some on the planning side for the Steuben County project, but we also will have some on the flow stuff. I just a little delayed on getting those flow monitors out there. So, does anybody have any questions about the statement? Yeah, John?
Under interest,
Yes.
I doubt that you meant 336%.
No, actually it is, because we only budgeted for $600 of income from interest, and we've already got $2,000 in, so cool. Yeah. Unless the Excel calculator is wrong for me, that's yeah, that's right. So we'll probably end up like 1,000% over if these interest rates keep up. Any other questions? All right. Moving on to the next one. This is like our balance sheet, our statement of assets. This is basically how much money do we have in our pocket. We can look at the bottom line total fund balance. We're at $342,217. Only things to note on this is that we do have receivables in the state of Indiana that hung out there for a while. I submitted the claim voucher. We get quarterly appropriations from the state of Indiana. I submitted it, but they were late in paying. So that has been paid since the statement. I should have reminded you all that these financial statements started on July 1. That's when our new fiscal year started, and they are just through September 30th. So I've got information since September 30th that is not included in these reports. And so that money has come in. But at the time of the statement, they still owe us. So that's all I've got. The accounts payable on there is for MACOG services from July, August, and September. These are included in this packet. Anybody have any questions on the balance sheet, statement of assets? Okay, last one. That is our cash flow statement. Like unlike the other two, which are prepared on an accrual basis, this is on a cash basis. I had to learn what the difference of that was, but basically, that state of Indiana one provides a good example. We showed that on our initial financial statement because we had billed them for it. We hadn't received the money. On this statement, you would see that basically $0 up there for the state of Indiana because we haven't actually received the cash at the time of the statement. this is early in the year for us, so we haven't gotten a lot of appropriations. The one in there from Steuben County was actually the second half of last year's. And then we did get from the town of Syracuse, their payment really early this year. But otherwise, just the basic expenses, and I don't really have anything to note on the statement of cash flows. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to field them. Right, that's all I have, Chair. They included a bank statement as well, and sometimes the bank statement doesn't match our cash statement from that one when we have uncleared checks, basically. But this quarter, all checks were cleared, so you'll see from the bank reconciliation that all that they matched the bank statement and the total cash match capital statement. That's all I've got on financial statements. Claims? Yeah. All right. So in your packet is some claims and invoices. Mostly it's the services from NACOG as well as some mileage and supply reimbursement for paid. We did have, this is since the September 30th, but we got a bill from Christopher Burke Engineering for first payment in the Steuben County stormwater and drainage needs assessment. We talk about that a little bit later. And then we have our legal expenses from today's meeting, totaling $27,496.79. Do you have any questions about any of the claims?
I have a comment. Dan Lash, Milton County. Have you thought of putting some money in a CD?
Yeah, right.
I mean, it looks like you're getting 8/10 of 1% interest. I know CDs are paying 3 or 4% right now.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
So, right, I know, and it's like, I don't think we would do better than what we're doing on this interest earning account right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
One of the other groups that I work with, we were looking at CDs and their interest rates are not as good as what we're getting in this checking account. Or I don't know if it's a checking account, it's some kind of special account for local governments. So that's why we're getting those kind of rates.
Well, I divided the money you got by the, it's 8/10 of 1%. So I think you can do better.
Oh, so it's less than what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. We can consider that. I think it's something of what we have on the horizon in the way of big projects that we would need, how long we want to lock it up for, but,
I've got money locked up now in an account that's a year and you can bail out in 6 months and it's paying over 2% right now.
yeah,
So that's short term.
it's interesting. Thinking about this from a local government perspective, there is been some legislation that I've been reviewing lately for these like watershed development commissions, and they do have the provision in there for investing in some of their money. So I know that's a thing that is done. But yeah,
Just start throwing out.
all right. So, hey, anybody else have any other questions or comments? All right, is that all the consent agenda? I think that's everything on the consent agenda.
So, no questions or comments, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion. Dan Lash, Milton County Commissioners. Representative.
Jewel Wise, Contest County Soil and Water, second.
Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to approve. Moving on to old business.
Right, so first thing under old business is just some updates on our existing projects. The first one is just a sort of closeout report from the Wetlands Task Force. We had our last meeting just after our last River Basin Commission meeting. We approved the final report. You can find that final report on the River Basin Commission website under resources. I brought along a copy of it, shared it with a couple of you all. For those who, may not be in this stuff all the time, the St. Joe River Basin has lost like 70%, on the Indiana side, has lost about 70% of the wetlands that were here historically. And when I say lost, they didn't, get up and run away. They were filled to make roads and buildings, or they were drained for ag ground primarily. And so, not only are these places great for mosquitoes and snakes and frogs and turtles, but they do a lot for us in the way of ecosystem services like floodwater storage, sediment filtration, nutrients, And then carbon sequestration is another big function. So they provide a lot of values to us. And basically, long story short, the 70s, I guess, 80s is really when it took effect. But due to the Clean Water Act, the federal government started regulating wetlands, certain wetlands of a certain size, a certain proximity to waters of the U.S. And the state of Indiana in the early 2000s recognized that the smaller, more isolated wetlands, although they were maybe less valuable in some ways, still played an important role. Many of them contain a lot of our rare and threatened species. So the state of Indiana passed its own wetland regulations that went above and beyond what the feds were regulating in the early 2000s. Well, fast forward from 2003 when that happened to 2022, and there was a bill passed to reduce Indiana. At first, it was to repeal the whole darn thing. But in effect, when it finally got passed, it reduced the amount of wetlands that were protected. Specifically, those lower ecological value wetlands. But one of the things that, everyone in this task force, there was, diversity of views represented on this thing. And everyone agreed that, although they may be less valued ecologically, they still play an important role in flood storage. So, one of the things that came out of that, I'm getting ahead of myself, was the creation of this wetlands task force, and the St. Joe River Basin Commission was one of 14 members of that task force. I was appointed to go down there and be part of those meetings. We had folks from the Builders Association, Farm Bureau, drainage, planning, permitting, all kinds of, DNR item. And we met a number of times, and our charge was to provide recommendations on things, and we have done that in the report. I highlighted some of those important ones on the slide. The in lieu fee program, which took a lot of heat in that bill session, it turns out provides a lot of relief for developers. It's cheaper, it's faster, so it's popular, and it needs to be better resourced. And then the biggest thing, and this could have been, there were 2 representatives on the task force that worked for state agencies, but it seemed clear to everyone that Indiana's Department of Natural Resources and IDEM are severely under-resourced, like understaffed is one way it's stated in here, but I think for any of you all that are involved in business, it's just hard to keep employees right now. It's hard to pay enough, and the state is really struggling with that. I don't think the compensation is as good as it could or should be to process the kind of permits that they're trying to do. And when development takes off, it gets backlogged. And so one of the recommendations that was in there was that we need to do a better job of supporting state agency staff. So those are highlights from that. Does anybody have any questions about the Wetlands Task Force report or direct participation in it or anything like that? Okay. Next, old project, this one we hear about a lot, primarily in LaGrange County with Steve here and Zach Holsinger, the surveyor there. We've been helping with benefit apportionment. One of the things the drainage boards have to consider when they're looking to increase the maintenance fund on a county regulated drain, or establish a maintenance fund for a county regulated drain, or reconstruct a county regulated drain, is the cost of that annual maintenance has to be divided out to all the landowners who drain to that regulated drain, whose land drains to that regulated drain. And that's typically done through acres. We just divide up the total acres of the watershed. If you own 10 acres and I own 20 acres, I'm going to pay twice as much as you do with your 10 acres. But the state law, drain code, says the drainage board can consider a number of factors like soil type, land use, other things that would affect how much water is leaving your property. And so we've been working in LaGrange County to try and incorporate that into the apportionment process so that it's not just acres, but we're looking at what's going on those acres to help divide up that cost. So we've been doing some of that. We had to redo one of them. They decided to go with a lower rate, and so we had to reapportion it. Also, while we're on LaGrange County and this work with the surveyor's office, we did meet with the folks at Shipshewana Lake Association, talk about some sediment issues on Shipshewana Lake. And then also related to this, responded to some inquiries that were a result of Farm Bureau's drain school. I did a presentation on what we've been doing in LaGrange County. Zach Holsinger was there with me. And a number of attorneys work for county drainage boards. Were pretty interested in what we were doing and pretty excited about it. So I got a number of phone calls from folks who were looking for more information about what we're doing there. And then Zach and I also did a little interview, a recorded interview with this consulting firm who had a grant to help us. There's some computer tools on the back side of this that allow us to do that calculation. And they were helpful in developing that. And so they put together a video kind of helping orient people to why this might be a good thing to consider. And Zach and I will interview for that. So those are the updates I had on that project. I don't know, I guess I can mention it now. So we talked about wetlands task force earlier. Right now, there's a drainage task force that is, they had their first meeting last Monday. And our representative Dave Abbott, as well as Senator Sue Glick and Representative Bauer, who's over by me in South Bend. We have 3 members from our basin, 3 legislators from our basin that are on that drainage task force. And I know Randy Sexton, the Noble County surveyor, has been asked by Dave, Representative Abbott, to come down with him. And so we have a presence there from our basin, and we're pretty tuned in on what's going on down there because I guess it came up. I wasn't able to be at the first meeting myself, but there's a whole lot of overlap between wetlands and drainage. And so there was a lot of like, well, what did the wetlands task force say about this? We're going to talk about it here in drainage. And county surveyors are of course interested in this stuff, and I'll be tuned into it as well. Yeah.
What is the scope of this drainage commission? What are their goals?
The drainage task force, there's a number of things, just like our wetlands task force, there's a bunch of items. The 2 that stuck out to me that were like the most alarming, one of them was that they are supposed to consider whether drainage is being taken over by the state, taken away from local control and taken over by the state. And they're also supposed to look at what's happening in our neighboring states to see about this. And a little bit of a backstory here. A lot of this has come from, and if any of you are Farm Bureau members, there was a case down in southern Indiana where a farmer did some work on his own drain, and it was within the floodway, and he was moving material within the floodway. DNR got involved, said you need a permit, floodway permit to do this. I've never gotten a floodway permit before, and it just turned into a big fight. It was a big publicity campaign. So why I say if we were Farm Bureau, he actually mailed postcards to, I think, almost every Farm Bureau member in the state, saying that we need to get DNR out of our business on drain maintenance. And so I think that's the drive of like, is the state, controlling too much around agricultural drainage with the flood permitting program? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Since our last meeting, we got some applications for the Watershed Academy. I see some folks here in the audience today that were recipients. We have awarded financial assistance to 4 different folks from the basin. I should note that only 2 of them are being covered by the St. Joe River Basin Commission. We kind of partner with the Friends of the St. Joe River Association, also pays for 2 folks to attend. But for those of you who don't know, Indiana has through Purdue University what's called a Watershed Leadership Academy, trying to train folks to sort of get involved and help with this idea of treating water issues on the land and kind of the different stakeholders that got to be involved. And so you get a really broad range of folks having these things. Kate and I have both gone, myself, several of our members have as well. And the River Basin Commission for the last several years has supported some folks going down there that are working within our basin. So this year, Kyle Burchett, who works with Martin at the LaGrange County Soil and Water Conservation District, was one of the folks who got it. Monica Davis, who's here she volunteers with the Wood Lake Scout Reservation up in Cass County, Michigan, I think it is. And then Sean Grace, who works for the St. Joseph County, Michigan Conservation District as a, it says SISMA up there, that's a cooperative invasive species management area. So works on invasive species issues for St. Joe County, Michigan. And then Natasha Kaufman from here in Elkhart County, she's the redevelopment coordinator, does a lot with planning there. So we had 4 good candidates and sent in, I think, their first homework in January, I think it is. So anybody have any questions about the Watershed Academy? I know the folks really appreciated the support. And thanks, Monica, for coming today. All right. I think this is the last thing under old business. We've been working with Steuben County. I met with Jim and it's not Clint, it's his brother, Greg Nauer. And then I did meet with Clint as well. So Sheila McKinley has been helping us from Christopher Burke Engineering, kind of trying to look at the stormwater ordinance that's in place as well as drainage, come up with a strategy for how to fund really some of the technical review that's necessary. We're going to follow, first of all, how does our stormwater ordinance look? It's kind of old. Is it up to snuff? And then if we have one, how the heck do we fund it? How do we do the technical review that's required? And I think this is an issue in a lot of our smaller counties, or I say smaller, this more rural in general. And so we've been working on, I think Sheila mostly has been auditing, kind of like going through all the documents, what's there, and then most importantly, looking out to the rest of the state, ideally close to home if we can, finding counties who have programs that are doing well, feel like they're kind of running somewhat smoothly, to kind of provide some recommendations for Steuben County on how to manage their local water policy, really, whether it's, new development that's occurring and how that comes through planning and zoning, and at what steps are there to intervene, and how do we basically afford to have some of the technical skills on staff to be able to review these things. So we had interviews with the planning department and the surveyor's office. We just had a meeting with the Maumee River Basin Commission, so part of Steuben County flows to the Maumee. And we, recognize that any changes that happen with your stormwater ordinance or floodplain management or your drainage impacts them as well. So we wanted to make sure that Maumee River Basin Commission was involved and kind of ran through some of the stuff that the 50% with them, kind of got their input on it. And then we'll be coming on Monday. I'm going to go to Steuben County on Monday for a drainage board meeting and kind of report out some of the findings and some of the recommendations that they've come up with. Following that, we'll put together kind of a one-pager that highlights like what the most important things to focus on for the county are. So try and provide some assistance to Steuben County. Those who don't know, there's been they had a long-serving surveyor there for a long time. Had a lot of institutional knowledge, but hadn't raised any rates or done anything like that. And we've had 3 people now. Jim's here. I keep looking over there and almost like I'm talking to you, Jim. I'm sorry to everyone else, but there's been a lot of turnover recently because folks were like, "Wow, this is a lot, and we don't have much to do with it." So, Jim, I appreciate your resilience in trying to stick it out and figure out how to get it done. Oh, anybody have any questions on the Steuben County project? All right, that's all I have for existing project updates. I guess, yeah, it's on there under old business. Talk about it each quarter, but I'm going to turn this over to Kate, which I didn't say in the introduction. What you are, what you do, just that you're there with me. So feel free to tell folks.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Barrett, aquatic ecologist with the St. Joe River Basin Commission. So good to be here this first day of December. And I just have a few updates on various elements we're working on as part of our water monitoring program. Just as a refresher, this map core component of this presentation every time, but this is where the river basin has 12 biological monitoring locations where we are looking at the bugs that live in the streams. We selected 12 sites, 5 of which are on the Michigan side of the basin, the remaining are on the Indiana side, and this is meant to complement existing efforts that are ongoing by many of our partners throughout both sides of the basin. And, we just, well, not just, it's just, back in August now. Seems like it was just yesterday, but, 2022 was our second year of this program. So this is going to be ongoing annually every summer. We'll be assessing stream health using the critters that we found. And we had a really successful field season this second year of the program. I need to acknowledge, wouldn't have been possible without Brandon over here. So Brandon was critical of getting the samplers out there and then getting all the critters retrieved. And so these are just a couple of the, charismatic fauna that we've encountered in our adventures. Even though that one on the left is kind of terrifying, it's actually a really good indicator that the water is in really good shape. And just a reminder, we finished up a report on water quality trends for Elkhart County in May of still 2022. And that report you can find on our website, links there. And I believe there will be a press release coming out soon-ish about it, but we looked at just a decade's plus worth of data on 60 plus sites, surface water monitoring sites in Elkhart County, looking at general trends from E. coli to total suspended solids, salt oxygen, a whole bunch of parameters. And then some more recent water monitoring projects that we've got going on. Steuben County has been frequently on my calendar. We've been having some good conversations there. I'll talk a little bit about. We also made a trip up to Nottoway Creek to help out Calhoun County Conservation District with doing some biological sampling as part of some of their efforts. And then recently, just a couple weeks ago, Brandon gave a watershed presentation at John Adams High School in South Bend. And then a little update on the interactive web map. And so I'm currently working with the Steuben County Lakes Council, but also MS4 and Health Department to help guide a strategic water monitoring program for Steuben County. So we're moving forward and kind of picking out sites and thinking about what parameters we want to measure. So it's been good to get out into that area, that upper part of our watershed, and see what we can do in that regard. So I'll have more updates on that for the next meeting. Oh, this is just an example of one of the many graphs that were made to try to help piece together what do we know about water quality in Steuben County to guide what we want to achieve, hopefully starting this coming summer.
Kate, can I pause up? So the analysis that Kate did for Elkhart County, they have a stormwater fee in place here that helps fund, I think, the health department doing these regular samples. I know that folks in Steuben County are looking to replicate to some extent what they're doing here. I'm curious, what do you see as like some of the differences in what has been done by the Lakes Council so far compared to what was done in Elkhart County?
Yeah, so just
Seasonality, number of sites, like what's different?
like the current, like what
Yeah,
we're doing. So currently Steuben County, like the Lakes Council, they've been doing 3 graph samples total over the course of the summer, like early summer, midsummer, and then after like the tourist season. So it's just 3 samples per year for each site, which it gives you a very, very brief snapshot of what's going on versus Elkhart County with weekly samples during the growing season. So we're wanting to achieve weekly samples out there. So good stuff. So lots of graphs. There's a lot of those kind of types of graphs in that Elkhart report I just mentioned. And then, and so we spent a lot of time on the Indiana side, but we had an opportunity to go up to Calhoun County to assist folks with the conservation district up there, who actually ended up being Indiana Watershed Leadership Academy peers who were in my cohort for the watershed thing. So that connection kind of led to that opportunity. And the Nottoway Creek is one of our sampling sites too for the River Basin's biological monitoring sites. So And this creek, the watershed management plan is in the process of being updated. They were awarded a 319 grant. So we wanted to go up there and help with their efforts to characterize using the state of the waterway. And we found some really cool critters. We found a soft-shelled turtle, which was not a targeted specimen, but we put them back, and that was pretty neat. And some really cool dragonfly nymphs, which were really, I was really impressed by that. And then there's a nice action shot of Brandon. So it's great to get back out in the field in October.
So for anyone else that I didn't mention it in my introduction, but anybody else who's a paddler or likes to go canoeing and kayaking, you've never heard of it, this Nottawa Creek up in Michigan is probably one of the coolest tributaries to the St. Joe. They found a lot of good species because it's in really good shape. It's got kind of a wetland corridor, so it tends to not get blocked by log jams so much, and it's just really beautiful. So if anybody else is, I know Donnie's here, he likes to get out. Highly recommend check out the creek someday. Sorry,
Definitely.
public service now.
Oh, great. So this is really exciting. Like I mentioned before, we had an opportunity for Brandon to put together a watershed presentation. High school students at John Adams High School. This kind of arose because Brandon and I both completed the Hoosier River Lodge training in South Bend back in early October, and we met this high school teacher who was also getting certified for Hoosier River Lodge, and turns out he's in charge of their science department at John Adams, and he was like, hey, hope you could give we don't really talk about this in my classes. We want to come and give a presentation, and I thought that sounds cool. So we did, and this was just right before Thanksgiving. So Brandon gave a presentation to 3 sections of the IB environmental science classes for Mr. Matt McQueen's class, and a total of 67 students were in attendance across those sections. And we also decided to give an impromptu watershed survey, similar to kind of what goes into the stages of a watershed management plan. We just asked the students, okay, how do you think the St. Joe River, just the water in general, ranks for eating locally caught fish? And so you can see most of them said 4. So they thought it ranked 4. We asked some other questions too, like for picnicking or recreation and a whole host of other things. So I kind of thought, well, this might be cool to deploy broader scale, get a bigger sense of kind of a pulse on just watershed awareness. So it was kind of neat. So I was excited to do the presentation. It was really cool to get some data too.
So were those kids right? Is it any good for eating fish?
They sounded like,
Fish, I'm not gonna answer that.
I mean, I'm working on PCB and mercury this time.
Yeah.
I would say no.
No, from that standpoint, all right.
Might be okay.
Okay. Got some experts in the room if they want to voice in.
It's fine.
It's fine. All right.
Stay away from the park and catfish and everything else.
All right. Good to know. Thank you.
Cool. So great. And then kind of leading off from that, I feel like this past summer we're having a really successful monitoring season, and getting the Elkhart County report on water quality out the door. I've been really into the hard data, quantitative stuff, dissolved oxygen, water chemistry, but recently I've been really interested in the more sociological aspects of what it means to be in a watershed, and kind of breaching some boundaries perhaps in and merging 2 worlds together. And when I'm not here with the River Basin Commission, I'm teaching at Holy Cross College, and so this past semester has been really good for mixing up these kind of the boundaries of the world just disappeared, which is really awesome. And so shown here, I just wanted to give a shout out to just several of our members who've been really critical to me just being able to get students excited about this. Dara hosted a fish biology lab for my aquatic ecology class back in September. And so students got to go on the electroshocker boat and actually sample fish and interact with the river right behind their college. So that was really, just really cool to see some light bulbs going off and just this kind of deeper appreciation for the water resources. I also want to thank on this topic too. John Law was also critical to making our field trips to Judah Creek in South Bend for my product ecology class at Holy Cross College, really just even more enriched. So you came out every Friday with us and gave so much information, a lot of background on the Judah Creek Task Force. What is regulated drain? A lot of these kids like don't know what's a regulated drain, what's a ditch, what's a creek. So it was just really awesome to get this involvement. We also had some folks from like Ellen Pablo, another IWLA alum at St. Joe, Soil County, come out and go with us to lighting product to talk about all of this. So, and Sarah Beam as well came out to talk about MS4 and stormwater. So really good energy. Oh yeah, this is a photo. There's John about to net, I guess, put a net on my head. I don't know. But this is with this, like, it's not just our members and within our watershed that I'm able to do some cool, just like, hey, let's mingle these two kind of elements together. On our last field trip, this shown here is a group picture of my product ecology class and then a group of geology students who came up from Earlham College with Professor Shannon Hayes, who was also an IWLA alum in my same cohort, and we did our final project together. And we both were like, hey, we should collaborate our classes in the fall. And they were coming up here anyway to Indiana Dunes, and so they tagged along for our field trip. And they brought some cool USGS wading rods and stuff. So my students got to like use this high-tech equipment. So it was really neat, and it was just a lot of good fun. And so with like the Indiana Watershed Leadership Academy, it's really a great experience. So I think it's great that River Basin and the Friends of St. Joe continue to sponsor people, because it's led to, at least for me, like really good, like what I consider lifelong like professional connections and friends. So thank you for that. And then finally, almost finally, one more slide to go. I've been talking about, we've been talking about this web map that we're wanting to put together. And we are almost at the stage where it's actually ready to go to be tested out by folks. It still has a few bugs, but there's so much data that's been collected on water quality in our basin. And we're working with a really awesome GIS consultant and web designer who has been putting in a lot of time recently in fixing some bugs. And basically if you go to that URL, you can actually play around with this thing, and it shows all the sites for which we have data uploaded for already, and you can select different variables. So we've got fish data, we've got magma vertebrates, we've got shown here. I just took a snapshot of the fluoride levels, so you can kind of look at, okay, what sites have been monitored for certain things. You can also look at what the period of record is for each site. You can generate some summary information about the site and look at like spatial trends. Might be interested in what's happening in this area of the watershed, what are some general trends, and this, I will be working on documentation and tutorials for this. And we're still working on it. We've got a few more meetings yet to nail down some things, but I'm really, really excited about the progress of it.
Hopefully you're all ready to begin things.
Mhm.
Like, we see if you can make any sense of it.
Definitely. And then finally, I just want to say thank you for Brandon. Brandon graduates this month, so he's great. He's like one of those graduating a semester early, and so he has been critical to the success of our monitoring program and currently is in the AmeriCorps internship position with the River Basin, and he's been wearing more of the outreach, stewardship and education hat. And so he's been able to bring a lot of really good insight and energy to our program. And for that, I'm really grateful. Thank you for all your hard work. And with that, I think that's it for me. Any questions or anything?
So thanks so much, Kate. Kate's just like stuff about Brandon. She's bringing great energy and the connection that she's got to Holy Cross, which is what allowed Brandon to come, and then this opportunity we had to partner up with the AmeriCorps program, which we've been able to have Brandon working with us for next to nothing. Really. AmeriCorps has been covered. So it's been really great. I've appreciated you two bringing it. So thanks for being here. I know Kate will have to sneak out a little early. She got class today. But we'll be talking about a couple other things that she's been involved in that we're working on. But first, some business. New business. We got elections. Yeah. So we have a tradition here at the River Basin Commission. I think when I emailed you all, I called it the escalator. But typically, our officers kind of progress from one office to the next. The vice chair becomes the chair, and the secretary becomes the vice chair, and so on and so forth. The treasurer becomes the secretary. And I reached out to all the folks that were serving in those positions to see if they were nominated, would they be willing to continue doing that? And everyone either didn't respond or indicated that yes, they would. No, they didn't. So, but what that means is a couple things. You know, one, I gotta thank Chris Thomas, our chair, who's I think been on maybe even been an officer the entire time I've been here. She kind of hung around, somehow avoiding the escalator for a little while, and then once she got on, it's just been right. But I really appreciate you, for came on. John was the chair, and just having some people who I could really lean on when I didn't know what the heck was going on here. So really appreciate your leadership and stuff. So you finally get to step off, and like I said, those folks that are indicated here, Alicia is the chair now, vice chair. Adam, who wasn't able to be here today, actually texted me last night, really apologetic, but definitely said he is willing to step up to vice. And then Jim from Elkhart County SWCD also they'd be willing to move up. So that's an option out there, so for our court, we can still accept nominations from the floor, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean it has to be this way. It's just traditionally how it's been. No one's usually fighting over these offices. So it leaves us with one open slot to fill. And I talked to a few different people. Actually, last year, I think that Jewel Weiss came up to me from Kosciuszko SWCD and indicated that if we were looking, that she'd be willing to serve. And I reached out to her again this year before the meeting just to make sure we had someone, and she said she would. Ray Hoover from the town of Grange, who was not able to be here today, also indicated if we didn't have anybody else step up, he'd be willing to do it, but he said he'd be glad to let someone else do it, be the backup guy for a while. So Jewel has indicated that she would be, she's shaking her head, so I think that's affirmative. Step on as treasurer with some expectation that if you're still here in 4 years, that you'll serve as chair. And I appreciate that. But that being said, if there are any nominations from the floor, that can happen. Otherwise, we would need to make a motion to accept the slate of officers shown here with the addition of Jewel to elect our officers for next year. So that's what I've got.
Mark. Sorry. Any other nominations?
Mark Frank, LaGrange County, I would move the approval of the slate, including Jewel.
Second?
Jim McGee, Humboldt County. Second.
Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to approve. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all. Thanks, Alicia. Looking forward to next year. All right. So that's kind of the almost the super businessy stuff that we've got today. I got a couple other, these are just projects I want to touch on. This is largely Kate, really, so I'm glad we were able to get to it first. Didn't think about that when we put the agenda together. But Kate approached me, and we've been talking a little bit as she's been getting involved in more of this sort of education and outreach work. We really wanted to hear from you all, the members, about how we can best fulfill our purpose. I mean, we have to stay within our statute, but there's a lot of different things we can do, and we're trying to make the best of it, doing some water quality monitoring, doing some planning assistance, doing some different things. But hearing from all of you about what you see as sort of the main issues in your county, or what you think something like the St. Joe River Basin Commission with a couple of part-time staff people might be able to help you all with, would be really useful. So Kate has put together a draft, which we're going to put the finished touches on. My goal is to get it out to you all by the end of the year. I'm going to send next year's meetings out to you as like calendar invites, and I'll send a note, just kind of happy new year stuff. And I'd like to get this in there then, so, stay tuned, but, you know, I mentioned a couple of things, just what our priorities should be, what areas maybe we can improve on, and it's just sort of how to best use our resources. So, hey, I don't know if you want to say anything else about it, just, public, like the public stuff versus the membership side of things or anything like that. So there's some questions in there about that.
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you for including this in the, right in here, for me to take off every class. My whole goal is, I guess, just to have conversations with you all. Like, if you're interested, there's actually a question at the end. Would you be willing to sit down with us, or, you know, video call, phone call, or in person, and just talk about, like, what are the issues, what's going well, what's not going so well, just more broadly, in terms of our water and related land resources. And in terms of, like, you were getting at the question of serving, like, our members versus the public, I'm also interested in potentially, and not to get, you know, put the cart in front of the proverbial horse, but I'd love to get this out to the larger, like, the residents of our watershed and look at what do people up at, you know, the headwaters think about the quality versus downstream on both Indian and Michigan sides.
So that's good. That's a good way of thinking about it. And like, as you know, Kate's been getting involved in a lot of education and outreach stuff, and you know, there's some questions around, for me, around how do you guys see that? Do you see that as valuable? Is that a goal that we should? We've always hosted the symposium. We've always offered some trainings. We do the Watershed Leadership Academy stuff, which is open not just to you all as members. That's for the general public. But we haven't really leaned fully into, you know, some of the things we're going to talk about next. A watershed awareness campaign, or you know, we really, you know, before Brandon and Kate, you know, I would get out to some envirothon here and there, you know, to do some presentations about watersheds, but that wasn't, you know, a big part of our work. And so as Kate's been getting excited about that, I kind of wanted to just slow her down maybe a little bit temporarily, just to check in if that's where we kind of should be putting some of our efforts in. And so in the same way that she wanted to know, you know, upstream versus downstream, well, I encourage you, like, let's start with our members. What do the members upstream kind of think about watershed? And then where she would like to go, I think, with some of the stuff is more trying to really gauge what the public thinks that agency like ours should be doing and stuff. So stay tuned for that. And does anybody have any questions or comments on the survey? I mean, I was really hard to think about keeping it short and sweet. I think it's all multiple choice. There's some options for typing in if you want, but anyway, expect that to be coming.
Is this part of an overall plan for like the strategic usage of everybody's?
Yeah.
I feel like this is the beginning of one.
Yeah.
Are we going to be setting new usage strategic plan and goals of what the CHO would be doing?
We certainly could and should probably. I think that, you know, there's been a lot on my mind related to that as we start thinking about it. You know, Dan made a comment about investing some of our money, and like, we're in a position now, we've just never been, you know, when I started, we were about to go bankrupt. I mean, we didn't have money to really do anything with it. It's still not a lot, but we've got some money to do something, and that puts us in a position, you know, we had the request at the last meeting from the Lake Association, wanted some assistance with their monitoring. And it kind of puts us in a position, well, you technically, I saw your statements in your packet, you know, there's money there. Why aren't you helping us with this? Like, we do need some guidance, I think, and I think this will help be a part of that. But as what's made it really present to me lately is, and I don't want to get ahead of myself in the agenda too much, but I mentioned to a couple folks early on, there's this Watershed Development Commission stuff. There's legislation being proposed to give us an option like the Kankakee River Basin Commission had, where we could raise, you know, potentially millions of dollars a year for watershed improvement, flood mitigation. And if we get in that, you just can't enter into that without a very clear, for one, the counties aren't going to come on board and say, yeah, we're going to tax our citizens to do, oh, we don't know what, maybe this, maybe that, we'll figure it out. You know, we've had the luxury of kind of taking it as it comes a little bit, I think. But I mean, I know Kate and I, at least personally, are at a point where we really want to hear back from people just so we can even help guide that, take it as it comes thing for now. But really, I think we're getting to a point where we think we've got enough money, and we've been encouraged from the beginning, whether it be from the folks over at the Kankakee Commission or the Maumee River Basin Commission, that developing sort of a comprehensive strategic plan for the agency really will position you well for what's to come in it. Yeah.
I think an interesting project might be to, I'll just speak, like West Lakes, to monitor each of the tributaries that empty into the lake for water quality and kind of make a map. We've got five tributaries that empties into our basin or the West Lakes Basin. And let's see the water quality of each of these so we can kind of develop a map. So we see if we've got water quality issues, where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And kind of do that throughout the basin.
Right. And I mean, that's where we started. So I always saw monitoring as sort of the low-hanging fruit. Like, that's something the River Basin Commission has done for 20 years. We've been involved in monitoring. We've never had the money to do a really robust monitoring program. When we started with Dave Arrington, we had some stuff going on. And when we brought Kate on, it's like, that's a safe place for us to invest our money at this point. And so the work that she's been doing with Elkhart County, now Steuben County, and Noble County could certainly come on in that same way, where we use it. If you look at our budget, that's where probably, well, if we take staff out of it, it's like probably 60% of our special project money is allocated toward water monitoring, whether that be USGS gauge support at Walter Lake, or the monitoring that Kate's doing, or these water level monitors we were installing. So I do think it's a safe space. So you'll see questions around that, like, do we just lean into that and kind of say, look, we've only got $140,000 to work with each year, but other than staff, let's take and put that all into water monitoring. Let's start and build the program up. You got money in the bank account. What are you waiting for? Let's do it. Well, I think what Alicia is getting at, and what these neighbors of ours have kind of said, is before you put all your eggs in one basket, do a strategic plan to kind of set you up, because honestly, there's some things on the horizon where there's some potential for raising some more money for watershed management, and we would be able to do more than just water monitoring if that was the case, or really robust water monitoring. And actually, that's where it would start. I don't get it. Thanks, Dan.
Well, the water monitoring is obviously where you start, and you see an issue, then you go to your elected officials and say, we have an issue here, and you escalate from there. It all starts with water monitoring.
And this is, something, Steve Wyman, shipping on late, and I rode over here together today, had some chance to talk, maybe this is ridiculously obvious to everybody except for myself. Had a meeting with, panel farmers, actually farm business owners on Tuesday this week, a couple of days ago. And an interesting thing came to light. Farmers have been a lot of peer pressure applied to farmers over the years. Farmers and people too, they're susceptible to that too. So farmers have finally got the idea that a good farmer soil tests every 3 years. Okay? And so, you talk about any farm, old or Amish, I don't care, big crop farmer, whatever. Then they'll tell you, yeah, good farmer soil tests every 3 years. Soil tests. They did Great Lakes last or whoever, they get their form back. And they look at them, that's a throw the file. And I think that the conservation world is susceptible to the same thing. Good lake residents, good conservationists, water monitor. And I just, in the last month, burned a 5-drawer cabinet of water monitoring notes and information that covered the Green County testing from 2006 to 2011 that nobody's looked at except the mice have been for for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years as weeds. And I finally decided, you know what, it's sitting there and nobody's doing anything with it. I got rid. Well, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I think water monitoring is good. And I think that soil testing is good. But I think that anybody that's engaged in one of those things has to have a clear idea of what we're going to do with the information. If we're not going to use it, it doesn't do anybody any good. We can compile data till the cows come home. And if we don't put that data in practical use, it doesn't accomplish anything. And like I say, that might be just real obvious. Everybody here except for me, but I came to that startling conclusion, I guess. So I guess, you know, I'm all for water testing. I'm all for soil testing, but we gotta know what we're gonna do with the information. We gotta do something with the information. It's gotta have a positive effect.
Well, I think one thing you have to do is have a relationship with your elected officials. And when you get the data, you go to the county commissioners, and you can say, we've got this data, or you go to the Kendallville group and say, we've got this data, we got this water quality issue, what are we gonna do with it? I mean, you're right, you just can't get the data, do nothing with it.
Yeah.
The next thing you gotta push when you get it. You gotta do.
What are you gonna do?
And it's, you know, when those issues, first of all, when you can pinpoint them, figure out where it is, when they can be solved or at least somewhat treated by working within 75-foot easement of a legal drain or on some property that the county owns, that's okay. But a lot of times, and the soil and water folks know this, it's private landowners that have to make changes to address this stuff. And so it's like, we may know where the problem's coming from and what it is, but, you know, we can't. That's why some of my interest is, you know, done some investment in water monitoring while we've been here, since I've been here, but I've also done a little bit of stuff. So I'm not trying to turn Kate off on the public awareness stuff, because what our SWCDs are doing out there at the local level is there's some way maybe we could enhance that to where we're really getting through to private landowners about private landowners making decisions on private lands. And I don't want to certainly step on soil and water's toes. It's more like, what can we do for you? Like, how do we help connect that dam? Because sometimes in a lot of cases, you know, now, not always. So West Lakes is sort of unique in that some of their problems they're facing now have to do with development in the floodplain. And that's a local enforcement issue. It's just not happening. And then we got to Steuben County where there is this law on the books, but no one's had the capacity to implement it recently. It's just like, well, how much can we do if we don't, you know, so I don't know.
Well, one thing I've noticed about watershed people that are really interested in it, they really get interested in the watershed, but they're not too plugged in politically. It takes both.
Yes.
It does take both.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to a Watershed Leadership Academy, I got up and they wanted, well, how do we move this forward? And I said, here's what you do. You give $200 to your favorite political candidate. That's what you do. Now you've got every political candidate's attention that you're going to get, and you leverage that to get stuff done. And that's the other half of the issue is political manipulation to get your desires done. And it all starts with getting to know your local elected officials.
So Matt, kind of circle around, I think maybe the survey is a good place to start, but I think we should do a strategic plan or at least an outline or sort of, you know, a summary one. Because there is a lot of times that we could have interagency support with other collective organizations that are in the community. So I don't know if we would have to spearhead it, but at least if it's delineated in a strategic plan, we could say, well, we will work with our towns, we will work with soil and water, and we will fund their project doing that. They will spearhead it, you know, we would need the support and the financial backing if they cannot do it themselves. But I don't think that the St. Joe River Basin should be a point on anything in a single county unless it's absolutely necessary. So instead of us doing water monitoring ourselves, that we are supporting those counties have organic programs themselves, like in Elkhorn, like in Steuben. Because as you know, with only 3 or 4 people, how are you going to sustain it as St. Joe River Basin staff are hired on? It should be an organic effort in your local county because it's going to be a better chance of success long term than just short.
Right. So, you know, I agree with everything you're saying, and it becomes sort of, for us, when you start shopping around a little bit about who's gonna help us develop this plan, and there's gonna have to be some engagement on your parts as well, like in terms of guiding it. Because we don't wanna just rely on what someone from outside says we should do, and we wanna get involved in that, obviously. But a thing that I'm mindful to right now is the plan almost would need, but should have sort of a, what do we do if we only got about $150,000 a year to do something? That's what we've been working with for a few years now. But I'd also like to see that plan say, well, but if you had more, like KP has.
And I think that expertise might come from an outside firm. but
Yeah.
there should be sufficient members included on that.
Yeah.
That can guide it. I mean, obviously, that right now is not a discussion we should be having, and we did great
Yeah.
details. But I think, the member survey and then the public survey might be a good, hey, this is actually needed at this point. But for us to grow sustainably and to actually make sense of where we're spending money and a framework to spend it equitably, we probably need to
Yeah, I agree. And it should probably start with what we got now. That's.
I'm just reaffirming, you
Yep.
guys are in the right
Okay.
direction.
Cool. Anybody else have anything on this? Talking about related things here more, so. All right, move on. Okay, this was an opportunity to share a really cool graphic with you that, Katie's listening, she kind of helps me with stuff. She's our marketing person and she's also technology. She helps get these live streams going for us and stuff. But, Kate sort of pushing this too, just watershed awareness, this idea that we are all connected, that why in the heck should LaGrange care about the St. Joe River? What's that got to do with us here? I know we've had members in the past talk about taking a trip down to Florida, and on the way through Tennessee, they saw all these signs on the road that said, oh, you're entering the Suwannee River watershed, or this one, what the heck is that? So different states and different groups have approached it different ways of like trying to raise awareness about it, but also it should be towards an end, for what purpose? Like okay, I'm in the St. Joe River, whatever. Well, there's some interest, I think, I know there's interest from some of our partners, groups like the Friends of the St. Joe River and Michiana Watershed Group, around increasing awareness about the connection that we all have through the water bodies. And I'm curious and sort of interested myself in getting behind this as a commission, possibly in some way, at least as a partner with these other groups I don't know whether it is something like a road sign campaign. I know Kate at least just wanted some shirts for her and Brandon to wear, a t-shirt that said St. Joe River Basin on it or something. But what I really, once you start pushing me on it, I don't, no one knows what that little logo means or anything like that. And I sort of worked with our marketing person to put together what you see on the slide, which it doesn't say, St. Joe River Basin Commission on, doesn't say Friends of St. Joe or whatever, but what I was trying to do with this is come up with something that does kind of connect us all, and that's something that's identifiable. And I don't know if that is this, I don't know. And I'd really like to hear from like Kosciuszko and Noble County in particular, like in the area where I live in St. Joe, and I can imagine in Steuben County, any of the counties that are on the border, this word Michiana does mean something to people, but I don't know as much whether it means anything in Kosciuszko County or whatever. But when I think about our basin, the line runs right down the middle of the thing, the state line. And really, it's all these water bodies that are draining, and you can't see it real good on the slide, but it shows all the major rivers that are all coming to this thing that happens to look like a heart when you color it, right, or whatever, so there's a cheap, gimmicky kind of thing, there's a slogan to put together with the heart of Michiana as our watershed or whatever, but really trying to kind of get at that connection part, the two-state part, and that kind of thing. And so we put this together, and what we do with it, I don't know, whether it's stickers, t-shirts, or whatever, but the idea would be to try to not just increase awareness, but drive people towards some more information, whether that be our website or partners' websites, something to kind of get at why does water matter, what's this about, and thinking that, and I'm not looking to make decisions on it necessarily right now. It's can be something, it'll be touched on in that survey, not explicitly, but public awareness. That's something we could lean into. And I think that our marketing person has really helped put together a really, I don't know, maybe it's cheesy, but I think it's a cool graphic. I shared it with a couple of people that I'll wear that on the shirt. That's kind of cool. I don't know. And then we do, because of what Dan was mentioning, some of the political connections that we have, if we wanted to do some kind of a signage campaign, being a state agency, I think I'm not saying we could get it done, but we got a better shot at it than the Friends of the St. Joe River do. I think, we're connected to, at least on state highways where they enter the watershed here, you can put a sign, now drain into the Lake Michigan or something like that. So anyway, just a thought. And like I said, I really wanted to share the graphic with you all and kind of see if anybody had any thoughts on it or anything like that. So you guys got anything to share on it? That's great. Otherwise, that will move on. Talk to me afterwards. Let me know if it's done. Last thing, and this, could be some collaboration here on this. Dara stepped out of the room, but Dara serves with me on the board of the Friends of the St. Joe River. And the St. Joe River Basin Symposium, for those of you who don't know, we're in our 23rd year now of doing it. Last couple of years have been virtual, as those screenshots are from. But this was traditionally and should be ideally an in-person event, bringing together Michigan and Indiana. This was the one time a year where the commission really got behind trying to bring the two states together. And we did it forever up in Michigan at Fernwood Botanical Gardens and Niles. Then we started bouncing back and forth with this side, then COVID happened. And so we're going to get this thing going this year. I really want to do it in person. But at the last Friends of the St. Joe River meeting, Dara, I mentioned that you were there with me. There was some interest in partnering, if we were interested in it, and if this group would be, with an event that they do each year, and trying to kind of make something big and something for everybody, really. And when I say big, the symposium traditionally was just a morning thing. Come in the morning, light breakfast, and we would end with lunch. Nice lunch. And it was great, worked out well for people who work in natural resources or who this is part of their job. They can come to it because it's during the workday. The Friends, on the other hand, has been doing an event for a number of years that takes place in the evening. And it's a more informal affair. It's got an open bar. It serves dinner. We have a keynote speaker. We kind of talk about it. We call it a watershed celebration, but it's open to everybody. It's after hours, and we've had good attendance at it. And it's, I guess, mostly been held on the Michigan side of the line. It's actually located in the watershed. And there was a suggestion made of trying to combine them in a way where you held the symposium in the afternoon, whether it maybe started with lunch or something like that, or just was held later in the afternoon. So for people who want to be part of a more, I don't know, drier, it's maybe not the right word for it, but more explicitly educational and networking in a more, like I say, professional way, I guess. Combining that with then, that one ends, and if you want to stick around, an evening event starts where you can get a beer and have a cocktail, talk to folks who are out, got off work maybe and just are able to get there at that time. But really trying to make a big event, and it's not to say our whole event wasn't big or the Friends one wasn't good, but I think both got hit by COVID hard, and so I think there's some interest in really getting something going again. And I don't know. I just want to see what you all felt about it, about getting back together in person, doing it in the afternoon instead of the morning, and possibly on the same day as this celebration event would be. I mean, you would like you to have to go to either, to the other one, but it would open up that opportunity. Somebody.
I like the idea.
I like the in-person stuff.
Yes.
Okay, you're your friends thing was in March typically, and our event was in May, as I recall.
Yes.
So what do you think?
I'm thinking-
I think it sounds like a great idea.
I'm thinking May. I'm thinking when we had our event typically. I just, for one, it gives us some more time to really publicize it and put it together. And that's the other thing. I mean, I ask those three things, but I ask this every year. If you have ideas for who would be a good speaker, someone, or a topic even, I can find a speaker. But I think May gives us a little, I mean, March is like, that's gonna be here quick. And we have a quarterly meeting in March too, so it makes it a little crazier here. I say a river basin meeting, our next one is in March, so this would give us one more meeting to kind of like finalize anything, that kind of thing. So that's what I would lean towards March. Sticking with our symposium date, and I don't think anybody at the Friends would have any issues with that. Anybody have ideas for topics? Last year we talked about kind of this watershed development commission stuff, kind of like how can the states get Michigan people there and maybe get involved in this watershed management stuff. The year before that, we did the dam removals that have been happening on both sides of the state line. I don't know. Put you on the spot. I know it's hard to come up with stuff, but and this goes to the audience too afterwards, like, let me know if you got ideas. And I am someone who feels that the speaker is more important than the topic. Like, I really think it's important for us to have someone who's good storyteller, good communicator, kind of keep you engaged. So if you've seen someone like that, connected to water, flooding, water quality, let me know.
I was kind of thinking about, like a conference style format where you have, suppose you put out a call for people to present.
Yeah.
Kind of open it up. I don't know if it's a great idea.
Right.
But that gets, you have people from all over the watershed speaking on the project.
Yeah.
Whatever topics they want.
Like that. That'd be cool. I know they get a lot. I mean, I submitted one for the NAFSM, the Indiana Association of Stormwater and Floodplain Managers, had a conference in South Bend. I submitted one and went and talked there, so you'll do it. I did it. And they had 4 days worth of presentations all day long, so obviously I wasn't the only one.
I was kind of thinking like, for us, Goshen,
Yeah,
Bob, somebody like, I know Bob Barr's done
Yeah.
it before, and he's a great speaker,
Yeah.
Bob Barr. See about this.
Yeah.
I know, like, up in Michigan, their Kellogg Research Center, like, here 3/4,
yeah,
Phil Robinson, somebody like that.
right.
Touch all over. From a research side, from a grounds on, hands on. I don't know. Bob Barr's always great.
Oh, yeah.
He's been in it. He's
Yep.
involved in this organization. He's done great things.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody would like
Might
hear
see
him
him again.
again,
Exactly.
seeing him again.
Yeah.
He's very personal, but then have other organizations, have this event projects.
Yeah.
Kind of do, but
And that's, I think in the past, when I think back on the first symposiums I started going to, there was sort of a, I don't know if they ever called it a keynote, but there was the last presentation before lunch was always the longest time slot.
Yeah.
But then there were a number, for a while, we had those Ignite presentations that you all hated me for asking me to do. I don't know if anybody's still in the room that had to do one. Janelle.
Yes,
I don't have to be involved. But those were fun. It was great to hear from 6 different projects that are going on in the watershed.
we had that front meeting up there at St. Pat's Park.
Yeah.
Their Jennifer Tank is another great, bring that in. It's right in our watershed.
Yes.
And so as much as I always love to bring great speakers in from outside, we have a lot of activities and stuff that public really, we educate and whatever, but they still don't know what else is going on. And so,
Some of those people, I know are Kosciuszko people. I've heard Jen Tang talk, lots of times, but it's cool stuff. It really is. I don't know. I'm with you, Jim, in terms of, I think someone like a Bob Barr or Jen Tang, just as 2 examples of people that, you almost, it's still enjoyable each
It's still,
time.
it gets you fired up, it gets
And with the
people
digital,
involved,
right,
so.
And do
Yeah.
you have time to plan something this large in 6-7 months?
I think so. I mean, we do our best. I think we gotta do something.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that it really, the only, the biggest switch for us, other than, and we're already faced with this location, we haven't spent so long since we've had one, we're back to the drawing board a little bit on where. But other than location, it's just, if we're gonna do this, it would be a time, so it would be, instead of morning, it would be afternoon. Otherwise, I don't see that it logistically saves us anything, unless we just decide to go away from in-person symposiums for, yeah, right. So as long as we're gonna do something in person, I don't think this will, I mean, it's just the idea of a double header kind of thing, and the ability to stay. And I know the Friends is talking about someone as their keynote speaker that I think you all would really enjoy. We heard he's from the USGS, the geologist that has studied the St. Joe River Basin, historically, like millennia or whatever, like how it used to flow to the Mississippi. And, through glaciation and stuff, it changed course and went to and he actually made it really interesting. It's really was weird, but like 10, 15 years ago. But, they're looking at him as their keynote for the evening. The place we used to have it is smack dab in the middle of watershed, just across the state line from Howe, up there in Sturgis Young in Sturgis, Michigan. And, COVID hit them hard too, so I don't know if we want to necessarily stay there. They always had catering on site, but COVID dried that up. So we're gonna have to bring it, if we're gonna do food, we're gonna have to bring it in no matter where we are, unless you guys have ideas of.
Sturgis Young's, size is gonna be a little bit of a factor.
Yeah.
What you get attendance wise there at those.
Right, we used to fill it up pretty good with just the old one, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah. The auditorium itself could seat everyone. It's to
I'm
be.
gonna throw something at you
Yeah.
that probably is off the wall.
Um,
We're conservation organizations, we represent that. And I like the idea of going in May.
Yeah.
When the weather is a little better.
Yeah.
I've wanted for years, the Indiana Association of Saltwater Conservation Districts, in district law in Indiana, we have to have a district annual meeting to report our operations to the taxpaying public.
Yeah.
And we have to have it, for whatever reason, in the first quarter of the new year for last year.
Yeah.
So that means January, February, March, meaning that we absolutely have to do it indoors because our weather is the way it is in Indiana that time of year. I've envied our RAMC for years, our rural library organization in LaGrange County, because they can put up a great big tent in an open field someplace and have a semi-outdoor type of activity because they do their annual meeting in June. Okay? And I'm not trying to make it extra complicated, but in a semi-outdoor, it would not only be appropriate for what we do as conservation organizations, but it would be, it would open up the possibilities for maybe a lot more than what it is. So
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out
Okay.
there.
No, that's
Wild
good.
idea.
Yeah. It's good. Location is something we talked about at the Friends meeting too. You have ideas like that, Martin, and so, don't be shy about going further with me, whether it's here or later, about what field, what park, where, where is that spot?
I mean, we call this a pavilion.
Yeah.
This isn't what I call it. Maybe at one time it was a pavilion.
Right. Right. But, well, I will, unless anybody has objections, I will assume it's no skin off anyone's back if it's just the afternoon and do it on the same day. I mean, that's.
One of the things I just
Yeah.
thought of, and Dan made a good point of how we gotta get it out to our public officials and
Yes.
things like that. And we always, those are the people that really should be at the meetings,
Yes.
or these kind of things, they never come.
Yeah.
Um,
You get to be your stuff.
so maybe, maybe if we would select around and get it, and you would know who those keynote people would be, to maybe ask them and have them present do a small presentation of what's going on in their communities. Because what staff would do was drive them to learn what's actually going on.
Right.
And force them to be in front, but maybe we go and ask them, hey, would you want to present at our at a 15-minute, 20-minute slot? Different elected officials around in the basin.
Yeah.
Put them on the spot.
Right.
Put them there, because what that will do, because Bill and I and the rest of the American are looking in, we're trying to educate. Nobody's ever put on the spot.
You have the media there too, if you do that.
Well, and that's what that does. That draws.
I'm saying,
Yeah, I know, you're used to working with state legislators, especially too.
That draws a little more media than a speaker and it doesn't have to be the main show, right? Maybe a couple keynote individuals ask them to present.
Thanks, Jim. Hey.
So, do you want or see, have anybody send in ideas to you?
Yeah.
That we not pick up today, and then you can kind of very readily include,
Yeah.
because it sounds like there's gonna be a change of more.
Possibly, at least
Well,
moving it,
possibly,
at least moving it to the afternoon. And it's a big change from last 2 years because we've just been virtual.
Yeah.
It's got to get back to the swing of feeding people and thinking about, the budget for that. So, that's why I like the idea of it being in May, is we may need to approve a budget amendment, for, I don't know whether we budgeted for that size, and then not size, but that.
So is this moving forward, fine? Friends of St. Joe, that's what we're doing for sure. We're seeing what we can come up with.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Dar, do you have any sense? My sense from the Friends is they would love it. It would only add to their event. So
So are you looking for board action on this?
I guess so. I mean, as Chris is alluding to, it wouldn't hurt me. It would help me.
I would move that we investigate, pardon from we investigate the possibilities of combining the two events. I think to get more specific right now is premature with actual, nitpicky arrangements, but I think we ought to move ahead and put the two events together.
So thank you, Mark. Before you go further with that, can I ask, because the timeline is going to be somewhat short, rather than investigate, can you give me authority, go ahead and move forward with it, assuming that they're open to it? Sure. Okay.
As strongly as you'd like me, as strongly as is appropriate, I'd be willing to move we go ahead and do it.
Yeah, exactly. And if it doesn't work, I'll do my best, but I think I don't expect objection from them. So it's just a matter of finding a venue and trying to stay close. When I talk about a budget amendment, it can't be double what's in there now. I'm just talking about trying to stay within there. We might get tight with some of the other things that are going on. So, but yeah, I would say a strong one like that, we do it, but give me the guidance or the clarity to help.
is there a problem with combining a group that is selected by county officials and combining our efforts with a group that's a volunteer group and not commingling that? I don't know if that's going to present an issue or not.
So in our attorneys here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why I don't think it's a problem is that this will not be a business meeting for us. And it's always been sort of open to, in the past, I wouldn't say the public, but different. It's not the body. It's not just this body that comes to it. And, the combination of the two is probably mostly only an advertisement. There's still two things. One's this afternoon symposium, and then there's an evening dinner and celebration. So that seems all right.
Yeah.
If they were a for-profit, we might have.
You're right.
They're not-profit businesses that are interested in most of the things I think you guys are. I mean, it's not like you're gonna be giving tons of money to them for their end.
Right. Yeah, and I should be clear about that, actually, and or you all should be clear about that. I was not expecting to spend St. Joe River Basin Commission funds on that evening event.
Right.
You know, when we talk about food, we talk about cost of the event. This is just my assumption. This is how I was approaching it. I was assuming it was the meal associated with our event and the space for our event that we would fund. And
I guess what I was thinking, and I'm probably wrong, but we have a body here that is appointed by an electorate, and then you have another body that's not, and if that body that's not appointed by the electorate is trying to steer, then that's probably out of line. That's the only thing I'm saying. But if the event is not that, then we're probably okay.
Conservation in Indiana is marked by, broad cooperation between private and public institutions and agencies. Pheasants Forever, Saltwater, DNR, IDEM, you name it. I mean, we've got NRCS at the federal level as well. We've got what we call the Indiana Conservation Partnership is widely divergent in the different members that feed into that. And I guess I'm used to the idea, and I don't see it as a problem. Now, you know, the nitpicky part of it is that who's gonna pay for the supper, or who's gonna pay for the this or the that. I guess we can sort that all out.
That was my issue.
So Alicia has a comment, so I would like to amend your resolution and say that, we work from parts of St. Joe. We host the education program, and the Friends of St. Joe host a networking event in the evening. And, yep. And we push that.
As a joint effort.
Yes, I'm amending your resolution before you.
That's fine. I agree.
We got a motion. There's a second.
Second, our team. Okay.
Okay, so we have.
Ashley, did you get that? Okay.
Do I have to withdraw my original? I can't.
I don't.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to approve.
Super. I'm gonna expect to see all of you there. Historically, I don't think we had a really good turnout from commission members, I understand. Sometimes it was located far away or whatever, but you know, let me know if there's anything I can do to help get you there. So I'll feed you and try to find an entertaining speaker. That's the best I can do for now. All right. So this is the kind of the open item. I don't know if we want to open it up to members right away. I do have one business thing that I had to stick under here, but I can take it before or after others.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay. So this has come up, it came up last year, and then I forgot about it. We approved our meeting schedule at the last meeting. And this December meeting always seems to occur the same weekend as the County Commissioners Conference in Indianapolis. And I had a couple, County Commissioners, one of our five, member, asked, you know, can we move that? And so I wanted to put it out there, at least the request, but that conflict seems to happen. So our meeting schedule is always first Thursday of the 4 months that we meet each year. Next year, if we agreed to hold it on December 7th, so the first Thursday in December next year is the 7th. And I guess I'm wondering and or asking if it would be possible to move it maybe up 1 week from the 7th. So next year in particular kind of works out well. Last few years, it's always been the week after Thanksgiving, and it still would be next year. But it wouldn't conflict with the Commissioners Conference, as I understand. that are scheduled. But I don't know if it does move it into November, then all of a sudden it's not a December meeting, it's November 30th. Or looking at my calendar, that we could also move it back to December 14th, starts to get a little close to the holidays, but my first thought was to just move it up, stay a week after Thanksgiving. I don't know. And we don't have to change it at all, but I thought I'd put it out there. I told the commissioners when I responded back that I would, bring it up with you all.
Discussion? Or again?
Close are we to four?
Oh,
Losing our four.
plenty. We got 16 and the quorum's 11.
Is there any commissioners present for this?
Well, they can't be because, well, I guess they could if they chose to skip their conference. But Dan, we have representatives of commissioners here.
Yeah.
And I know Anita was one of the people that reached out and asked. She's like, oh, this conflicted last year too. And Brad Rogers from Elkhart County, he was here last quarter when we approved the meeting, but he probably wasn't looking at his calendar and thinking about it. But he's one of the ones that asked if we could possibly change the date of it.
And I want to see if we could after Thanksgiving in Harlan and that there's two discuss the Harlan.
Right.
Honestly, I think we should utilize our process better. That's why we have them.
I didn't, no one was looking, I didn't promise anything to anybody, but it's like, it's not a problem. Just want to bring it up. Tell them I would. We don't have a motion, we don't have a motion.
Discussion on
Clarify, what's the proposed date? December 7th?
December, it's not even
Yeah.
so right now the meeting is set for December 7th.
You're asking for it to be set to what? I didn't.
Yeah, that's the date.
Right.
Oh, you didn't propose an alternative.
I proposed either moving it up a week to November 30th or back a week to December 14th. But
When's Thanksgiving fall next year?
whatever, 7 days before the 30th. Third.
The 30th would be okay then, because I didn't want it, Thanksgiving Day, obviously, so.
And I don't know if this was the intent of your question or not, but we had plenty, even with them not meeting together. We had a strong quorum. We've got commissioners who appoint non-commissioners to be representatives, and that works well. In the case of Elkhart County, where the questions came from, the commissioner has appointed the other commissioner as their proxy, so then they both end up going, so.
Well, the other issue is, of course, if Anita has an issue that she wants aired, she can tell me what it is.
Absolutely.
I would say it was a treat class.
Exactly, I'm good.
Did, you brought it up, thank you.
Yes.
And,
All right.
we're gonna go.
Okay, any other business updates?
I'll keep this short and sweet. We're already good, about 40 minutes here. So a couple things that I want to highlight for you guys. The one, which I'm just going to mention, I referred to it earlier, but I received some legislation, a draft of a bill from Representative Mike Aylesworth that I've talked about in these meetings before, but it's about watershed development commissions. It's essentially what happened with the Kankakee, which was originally a river basin commission like us, funded the way we are. They were transformed into a watershed development commission, which basically, easy way to say it is it gives them taxing authority, but it doesn't actually work like that. The county is still the one that applies the tax, and the county has an option to not apply the tax, but they basically owe the Watershed Development Commission the money one way or the other. They don't have to do an explicit tax the way they're able to, but they gotta come up with that money somehow. Anyway, this bill that's been proposed now for 2 sessions is unlike the Kankakee in the sense that it is not forcing this on anybody. It's an option to create, counties could come together and create one of these things. And in its first iteration, it apparently didn't recognize that there were existing river basin commissions there. What about us where we already exist? What is the process there? So this newest iteration, one of the changes is that it has a whole process for how specifically the St. Joseph River Basin Commission would transform into a watershed development commission if the counties chose to do that. That's one of the big changes. The the bigger changes for, if you've been in the weeds on the bill, is it never allowed you to address water quality. And water quality was the initial purpose of our commission. And so that has been added as a power. We could work on water quality as part of this commission. And then the big change, and then a lot of this came out with, so Dara represented the St. Joe River Basin Commission at the Indiana Water Summit down in Indianapolis this year. And the legislators who were proposing this bill were there to talk about it. And I think Dara made some good points with the people in the audience. The after discussion was good. And one of the big things that actually came from a surveyor over in Wells County, and it's something that I echoed, is the original versions of the bill set the amount that would be assessed to each landowner. And so for agricultural parcels, it's a per acre rate. For residential parcels, it was a per parcel rate. And then for commercial, it's a per parcel rate. But it's what they used in the Kankakee. And it set that. And over in the Kankakee, it raised maybe $2-3 million a year or something like that, I think. 2 million, okay. But the math hasn't been run for any other county, and the point was kind of more like, what an arbitrary, so shouldn't the amount that we're taxing people be based on the need rather than just some arbitrary number? So this newest version of the bill, that is set as a maximum. And the commission, in each year, they have to approve a budget, and then in that budget it just has to be, it can be reduced by any percentage needed, but it needs to be reduced equally to all the counties. So it kind of keeps some, fairness there amongst the counties. But more importantly, is I think that it gives the ability to, and I mentioned this before the meeting, so some people have heard this already, but kind of ease into it in areas where water isn't as big of a problem for a lot of people. Like if you live over in the Kankakee, you're hearing about flooding on the news every night. You can't get crops off because the dang thing is in your field all the time. Like it's a major problem over there. So for landowners to pay, and I don't know what it's in the bill, John may even know it, but like $7 an acre or something like that.
I think it's $1 an acre.
Okay, so it's not.
The utility gets hammered. They're
They're
like $346 an acre or something.
And what I'm saying is, regardless of what the number is, the idea that you would be asked as a landowner to pay into something like that might be a little more expected, or like you might be a little more agreeable to it than if you live in our basin where, according to Kate and Dara, water quality in a lot of cases is pretty good. Flooding outside the West Lakes and Goshen, like it's not in our face the way it is in a lot of other places, to where I can just imagine from my time in this kind of work, a lot of people are like, wait, what? Like what? So the idea of having some big bill for that is probably not, I mean, most county commissioners that I understand, that they're not here today, so they can't speak up, but are probably not going to approve passing a tax on their citizens that is, maybe not at all, but certainly not one that's big. So what I'm saying is, by this being able to be lowered, maybe we could talk about a nickel or a dime an acre, and no one's really going to make that big of a fuss with someone. But maybe, and when we talk about a basin as big as ours, and an agency that's got a budget of $150,000, that could be a significant change for us. Like we could really potentially do some things that we couldn't do now. And when I say some things, I should be real clear here, and I just don't talk about this that much. Then it would be different than a river basin committee. I mean, you have to have a plan on the front end for what you're going to do, what you're going to spend it on, and you're essentially you're becoming an implementation agency. It's not sort of, at least as I understand it, you're not addressing studying the river, monitoring. I mean, maybe that can be incorporated into it, but it's not clear in the bill that a lot of the things that we've been talking about and that we've been doing would necessarily be the things that we would do as a watershed development commission. However, if we had a plan that said 2-stage ditches over here, intensive monitoring over, across the basin, installation of purchasing land for flood storage, said all these things. We could raise a couple $1 million a year to start buying land, to start, helping. And then I think the one that probably is going to get the most attention is log jams, woody debris removal. That's comes out of the Kankakee, but it's expanded around here.
But that was gonna be my biggest one was log jam removal, debris removal, all of not regulated drains.
Yep, so it's a different way to raise money for that, and, outside of layer grants, it would become another funding source for, woody debris management on non-regulated drains. And so, from our natural resources side of things, water quality side of things, there could be some concerns from folks about how that's done. But there would definitely be interest, I know, from the drainage world in having some money to attack woody debris removal on receiving water bodies. Right now, there's some, and this is the interesting thing, right? Right now, it's not, you wouldn't probably be able to use this money for woody debris removal on your regulated drains because you already have a funding mechanism for that. So this would be for those that are not regulated drains. Now, as the bill reads, to me, is legally, it's thick. But you could give up all your authority and your ability to raise money locally and just use this money, and like it would all go through this watershed development commission, all the maintenance of your ditches and all that stuff. But I would never, that's way beyond anything I would imagine here. Anyway, I'm gonna stop on that and just say that if you're interested in this stuff, talk to me. I'm watching it. I'm talking to other partners. And a formal bill, we don't have a bill number yet, but I expect he'll be introducing this. And there are a couple of I sent him all kinds of suggestions and comments and stuff. And there are two things that I'm stuck on, as one of them is necessary in order for this to be something that I would support.
Is this a statewide bill or just for us?
No, it's a statewide bill, but it references us because it would change our statute. And let me be clear, at this point, it's just an option. This is just something, like, even if the bill passes as it is, let's say it's bad, it doesn't mean we have to do anything with it. It just gives that option in there. So,
I was gonna say, keep in mind though, if you do become a development commission, because I'm also on the Kankakee.
Yep.
Basically, it'll take this board down to one representative per county plus one DNR staff member. So it would brings the board down to what?
Yeah, and that's, that's one of the major concerns that Dara brought up down at the Water Summit to this legislator was like, the issues in our basin, the cities have a big role. The health department has a big role in this. This is not just, an executive issue. And so one of the changes that they made was to say, now it says this in the bill, is that for the St. Joe, that this body here would automatically become an advisory committee to the new development commission body, which, like John says, is just one appointed individual from each county. But we would have this sort of official advisory committee that is the current River Basin Commission members would serve on it. But it's not, there's not clearly authority to that advisory committee. So I think, and John, been to the Kankakee meetings, they also have an advisory committee, don't they?
I'm on the advisory committee. Yeah, they tried to get commissioners on the main board.
Yeah.
If not a commissioner, then a surveyor.
Yep, that's this. The surveyor by default becomes one if they don't appoint one.
And then the way that Kankakee bill is written is then each county appoints one, one advisory person from the board. So there's the same number of advisory committee members as
Whereas
there are.
ours would be huge. It could be this bottom essentially. So I've been on. It's big for me. I've spent quite a bit of time on it because it's potentially big for what we do, but it's early. So Other thing that I wanted to mention, this is super exciting news for those of you who've been coming, for my Steuben County folks who, Jim, you haven't been here long enough to get beat up too bad, but Lenny got beat up. Steuben County, up until next year, unless something goes weird, has been the only county that has not funded our appropriation request at the level that we asked for. And they just passed their budget for next year, and they have us in there for the full amount that we asked for. So thank you to you guys in Steuben County. Janelle, I know you've been going the same amount of time as I have fighting for the Soil and Water District to get their spot in the budget too. And I really do think that this latest project, trying to, show, we've been doing other things there, but trying to show we're trying to help there has really helped push it over the top. Lynn, and a lot of credit to Lenny McDee. She made it a point, of course, she left the office. She wanted to try and get this in. So thank you, Steuben County. And for me, it's a little personal. It's a bit of a milestone. Like I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we were about broke when we started this whole thing. And I remember Martin Bromley told me that I was crazy. He said, there's no way LaGrange County is going to give that amount of money to this River Basin Commission, and gotten to a point where everyone's paying in the way the statute reads. It should work in an ideal world. So I think that's something I'm really happy about.
You can take some credit for that. The reason I had that attitude at that time was because of, and I'm not trying to cast judgment on anybody that's been involved previously, but I've sat here since 2008. If you look back at the batting record of this River Basin Commission, it, quite frankly, was not real effective in getting much done.
And no one,
And so, you and your predecessor, Jeremy, I think, started us on a path of being much more effective in actually getting significant conservation, actually happen. And so that has added to the legitimacy of the Basin Commission. So you can pat yourself in the back of that.
I wouldn't do it for that reason that you said. I think really a lot of it came from, I don't think anybody in my position ever felt empowered to just start going to the meetings, like go to drainage board meeting, go to commissioners meeting. And I can remember all of our county commissioners meeting. It's John Halliger still messes with me. Like, what are you doing here? Like, oh, this guy again? Like, what do you want? And it's like, I'm here to listen. Like, I'm just trying to learn what's going on here. And I think that presence created a familiarity, and that's been a big part. So, thank you. All kinds of other little projects, and the one that I didn't get to talk about that I wanted to, Tom Sullivan, City of Angola. We heard this presentation about a regional water study from Jack Whitman, and there's interest in this locally, and it's something that, Alicia, you asked about it before the last meeting. It's definitely on my radar now for more than one reason. So that's still there on the front side. Upper Elkhart watershed management plan stuff we've been working on. I'm going to stop there. I got a bunch of notes. I generally try to do in the director's report things that aren't included otherwise on the agenda, and there's quite a bit, but it's late. Thank you, guys.
Any items before? I have one. The Steuben County Total Water Conservation District, along with the ambulance for Steuben County Contractors Workshop. Registration is due today. If anybody wants to attend, it is going to be held on December 9th. Signage of 9, by breakfast. Stations 9:30 to noon. For speakers, 1 item to, the Ready Mix Concrete Association, and then somebody from industry. So anybody who's interested, it's open to anybody. I think we have 35 signed up so far. So open to anybody. So if if anybody who's interested would like to attend, registration is due today. So we can free lunch. Free lunch.
Nice, attention.
Yeah, right.
So, and I would also like to thank Matt personally for leading so well and keeping me in line. do that with Alicia, it won't be much at all. Thank you, I appreciate everything you've done. So, any other items on the floor? No, okay. We have a motion for
I
adjournment,
make a motion to be adjourned, Dan Lesh.
second? Second, please.
Aye.
Aye, anybody opposed? Carrie,
So next meeting, March 2nd, here in motion, and I really, it wouldn't happen if you guys didn't make this trip. I know for some of you, it's a long trip, and I really appreciate you being here today. I was a little nervous with a quorum. We're fine. Thank you.